Okay. So we'll start with two short demos. The first one is mounting your lino. So when you're doing a single layer or a single color, you don't necessarily have to do this. You might not want to if you want to cut out the shape of the lino. Then you can just use the lino unbacked. When you move into color, I would recommend backing your lino just because it makes it a little more rigid and stiff, and it makes it easier for registration. So to do that, we've got lino, and we're going to just use hardboard. So MDF or hardboard. I'm using 1/8 MDF. It doesn't have to be 1/8, but that's what I use at the university because it goes through the press easier. And it probably works better for the registration system that I'll show you later. You can get lino that's pre-mounted, so if you want to do that, you can do that as well. Or you can just...
Do they sell back here, Patty?
I think so. I'll double check with Kathleen, but I'm pretty sure they do. Sometimes it's quite thick though. Sometimes it's like a half an inch of MDF on the back.
Okay.
Which is probably a little bit. So get your lino, just measure out what you want to cut. Your MDF, so I made a line here. If you have a table saw, this is a lot easier. If you don't, then you just take an X-Acto knife and a ruler. Make sure you have something underneath. Keep the tables scratch free. And then so when you're cutting MDF by hand, it's better to do several passes rather than force it down and try to do it in one pass, because chances are if you put a lot of pressure on, you might slip and then you'll cut your fingers. And making sure you have a sharp blade too. So you just have to be patient. Sometimes you get a raised edge, so you can take your knife and just smooth it down. There you go. So to glue it on, we're going to use contact cement. So I'm using low odor contact cement. Yeah, the regular stuff, it's quite bad. This doesn't smell that bad at all, and it washes with water, so it's easy to clean up. When you get a container of this, make sure you clean the lip of the container. Otherwise,
Never did it open.
yeah, this one's like permanently glued. I brought some here, so I'll probably take a drill to this or something.
You know what I do for things like that is put Vaseline around.
Oh, okay. Good idea.
So if you do Vaseline, then that will prevent it. Good handy.
Basically, just put the contact cement on one side of the MDF and then on the back of the lino. Sure, there's others glues, but this is what I use. That's what we use at the university. So the brush, you can rinse it with water and probably reuse a few times. Eventually it'll get kind of gunky and then you'll throw it out. But... And then it'll look like this. cloudy. As it dries, it goes clear. To speed things up, I did want to, just before class started, so it'll probably take, I don't know, 10-15 minutes to dry. If you have a fan, it'll dry faster. If you put a lot on, it'll take longer to dry. So it's clear like this, and then you basically just line up an edge.
And you wait for it to dry.
Wait for it to dry.
Oh.
So both sides are dry, and then when the two surfaces contact, then they'll stick.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a chemical thing.
It's a chemical. So. Now I get this back. So sometimes for the backing board, you can cut it down to the exact size as your lino. Or if you want, you could make it a little bit smaller than your lino and then trim the lino so you get a really even edge. So it depends on what you want to do and how much lino you want to waste or what size your print you want to be. But so that's an option. So that's what I did here. So it's nice and flush.
So how long does it take to dry? 10, 15
Like here,
minutes?
10-15 minutes. Yeah. Once it goes clear, you're ready to go. So the backing. The lino, it's burlap, so it'll take longer to dry than the MDF because it's more absorbent.
And why do you put MDF on the back?
Just to make it more rigid.
Okay.
So,
So you can use it more times.
No.
more times. It's also like we'll see tonight. We're going to print multiple layers, and as you're cutting, you'll be working back into your block several times. And the more you cut, the more kind of flimsy the block will be, and then the harder it's going to be to line up or register. You can get away with not backing it if you don't want to, but I usually recommend it for color. It just makes it more rigid and solid, and it's easier to line up. You'll see tonight. You can decide for yourself.
Where do you recommend buying the MDF?
Home Depot. I have some here, little pieces, but like Home Depot, Rona. Maybe Hues. I don't know if this has any.
So it's not necessary for black and white, like a single
No,
print?
I won't. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, it can vary if you want to. If you cut a lot out of your block and it's really flimsy and it's hard to like line up, then you might want to.
Sure.
But usually for color though.
Okay.
Again, if you find you don't need to, then you can skip it. Yeah. So that's mounting.
Want me to wash the brush for you?
Should. I think that's my only foam brush here, so if anyone wants to mount it. The other short demo I'm going to show you is pinhole registration. Pinhole or pin registration. So last week I showed you how to use a registration sheet. This is next level up for registration. For black and white, maybe it's not necessary. When you do color, it's really nice to have. So. So for pinhole registration, you need to use registration pins. Right now they're metal. They're moving over to plastic. It's harder to source out the metal, so they're moving to plastic. I'll have some available for you if you want to use them. I'll bring them from the university. Hues also sells them. Not trying to push it, but if you want to try them out, I'll bring some next week. The pins, and then you'll need a piece of mat board cut in an L shape. You can also use, if you really get into using the pins for registration, you could use MDF or wood, something more durable. This is just cheap and what I had on hand, so. And I've cut enough for everyone to use. So it gets a little bit complicated, but we'll figure it out. So when you're printing, see, you have your Mylar underneath everything, just like before. You don't have to make a registration sheet. This could be your registration system right here, this L-shaped piece of mat board. On the back of your lino, you want to mark a corner. You want to make sure when you're printing that corner is always on the inside of that L. Like that. So I've marked the corner. So it fits in like that. And you're using the Mylar more just to keep things clean as you're printing. So on the piece of mat board, you're going to measure out how much of a margin you want, depending on the size of your paper. So I'm using 7.5 by 11, and for my block, I figured out that I want 1.5 inches on the side, and then we give myself 2 inches on the bottom. Kind of like you're making a registration sheet, but you're doing it on the mat board. Basically, this shows up. I've made marks. 2 marks here and then 2 marks here. And then I'm just going to use green painter's tape. You could draw it out too if you wanted to.
And this is the way you always do it for 2 colors?
It's one way to do it.
As opposed to how you did it last week?
Yeah, you could use the other registration sheet method. It's probably not going to be as accurate.
This one's more accurate?
This one's more accurate. Let's see in a sec. So that's where my paper is going to go.
You'll be sharing the demo with us?
Yes. Yeah. No. So what we do now is take these pins, and this circular part is raised. And I'm going to tape them down underneath my paper, like this. Well, you can pass it around. Take a look at it.
And how did you these pins are lined up with each other? Or not?
They can be. They're not going to move for the whole time you're printing.
Right.
So, I mean, if one's a little bit down and one's a little bit up, it doesn't really matter because they'll be all the same.
Is there a certain place where they're supposed to go?
Just underneath.
Okay.
So I tape them down so they're underneath, more or less evenly spaced. And again, if they're a little bit off from each other, that's okay.
Okay.
So along with the pins, You have these tabs. And the tabs are hole punched. And these holes are the same size as those circular, raised circular parts on the pins.
Did you make those tabs?
No, they came with a kit that Hues sells.
Shameless promotion.
Same as promotion. I think I've got 100 here, so we can probably share these.
Okay.
I also make them at the university, just with old pieces of mylar. So I can make a bunch, so if you don't feel like buying them, you don't have to. Don't feel obligated to buy things, but
So these are not specifically at a certain distance, like.
no.
Okay.
So I've placed my tabs. Like so. And then you put my paper in. Like so.
Okay.
And then I'm going to tape the tabs to the paper with green painter's tape.
That's the paper you're printing on.
That's the paper I'm printing on.
What did you call those other things? Just tabs with the holes in them?
Pins?
The pins or these?
Those
Tabs.
tabs.
And then you taped your paper to the tabs.
Yep. You want to do that for each piece of paper? Take another couple of tabs. So you'll do that for each piece of paper. So it takes a little bit of prep work at the beginning. So they're always, the tabs will be in the same location relative to the pins every time. So when you go to print, you'll have your block set up like so, inked up. And then you put your paper down like that.
You put the paper on top of the block.
And then print like you do normally.
Don't you usually do it the other way? No,
No.
no, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm confused.
Okay, so then what do you do when you do a new color?
So when you go into the next color, don't take these off. They have to stay there. So the pins will stay on the whole time you're printing. Don't take them off, otherwise you'll screw up your registration. And don't take the tabs off the paper. They stay on until the very end when you're finished printing, doing all your layers. So next layer you do, you just put your block in and then put them back in. And because the pins are in the same spot, the tabs are in the same spot to get really good tight registration.
So can I just, I could probably miss this. So is the bottom of your like paper that you're printing on lined up with your nice border that you made?
Yep.
With the tape? So the tabs really didn't matter where they were as long as the paper is lined up.
Yep.
With that,
Mhm.
okay.
That kind of makes sense?
Yeah.
And then is that idea that you keep carving the same block?
Yeah, tonight we'll be doing reduction, so we'll be using the same block over and over again. This does work for multiple blocks as well.
It does work for
Yeah.
multiple.
So that's registration with the tabs.
Okay.
I'll be using them tonight when I do the color, so you'll see them in action. Hopefully everything will congeal. Come together. Alright, so it's 7 now. The color will take a little bit of time, so how about at 8 o'clock we'll do color?
Okay.
I'll give you a chance to work and print and do whatever. Cool. Pause the video.